I discovered my wife's shocking cheating scandal from a forgotten smartwatch, exposing an affair with the pastor's son that destroyed everything. The smartwatch was supposed to be dead. 3 months collecting dust in the junk drawer, forgotten like everything else Chloe decided she didn't need anymore. But there it was, buzzing against my palm at 2:47 a.m. while I searched for batteries. The screen lit up with a text from someone named Damon. "Can't wait to taste heaven again tomorrow night." My coffee mug hit the kitchen floor. Ceramic exploded across linoleum like my world had just done in my chest. I scrolled up. Days of messages, weeks, photos I couldn't unsee. My wife's body positioned in ways she'd never shown me in 8 years of marriage. And this Damon kid, barely looking old enough to buy beer, telling my 32-year-old wife what he wanted to do to her in vivid detail. "Nate," Chloe's voice drifted from the bedroom. "Everything okay?" I powered down the watch, swept up the ceramic, and walked back to bed like nothing had changed. But everything had. The woman lying next to me, snoring softly with her Bible study notes, scattered across the nightstand, wasn't who I thought she was. "Just drop something," I whispered. She rolled over, still asleep. In the darkness, I studied her face, the face I'd kissed every morning for nearly a decade. Now it looked like a stranger wearing my wife's skin. Morning came too soon. Chloe bounced around the kitchen in her yellow sundress, humming hymns, while she packed her lunch for the church youth ministry meeting. "You seem happy," I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. "God's been speaking to my heart about mentoring the young men at church." She smiled, that radiant smile that had made me fall in love with her. "There's this sweet boy, Damon Rivers, Pastor Rivers' son. He's struggling with some personal issues." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "Struggling how?" "Oh, you know how young men can be, lost, searching for meaning. I've been counseling him through some difficulties with his father." "Counseling? Right. That's real Christian of you, babe." She kissed my forehead, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up tonight. The meeting might run late." I watched her Honda Civic disappear down Maple Street, then called in sick to work. Frank wouldn't be happy. We had 3 HVAC installations scheduled, but I needed time to think. The smartwatch sat on the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. I powered it up again, screenshot every message, every photo. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of deception. Damon Rivers, 23 years old according to his Instagram, pastor's son, youth group, leader, looked like he'd stepped off the cover of a fitness magazine, everything I wasn't. My phone buzzed. "Luis, you alive, hermano?" "Frank's pissed you called out. I'm fine, just dealing with some personal stuff. Want to grab a beer tonight? You sound exhausted." Rain check. "I've got research to do." Trinity Baptist Church sat on the corner of 5th and Main, like a monument to small-town righteousness. I'd been attending services there with Chloe for 6 years, tithing 10% of my HVAC wages while Pastor Rivers preached about marriage sanctity from his polished pulpit. I parked across the street and waited. The youth meeting was scheduled to end at 9. At 9:15, kids started trickling out. At 9:30, Chloe emerged with golden boy Damon beside her. They stood too close, talked too long. His hand brushed her arm twice before they separated, him to a red Mustang, her to the Honda. I followed the Mustang. Damon drove to Riverside Motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where truckers grabbed 3 hours of sleep and affairs happened in rooms that charged by the hour. He parked outside Unit 12 and waited. 15 minutes later, Chloe's Honda pulled up beside him. I watched from behind a billboard advertising the local casino, watched my wife of 8 years walk into that motel room, with a kid young enough to be her little brother, watched the lights go out, watched my marriage die in real time. The smart thing would have been driving home. The smart thing would have been hiring a lawyer in the morning. Instead, I sat in my truck for 2 hours, documenting everything with my phone's camera, timestamps, license plates, the works. When they finally emerged, straightening clothes and avoiding eye contact, I was ready. "How was the meeting?" I asked when Chloe slipped into bed at midnight, exhausting. These kids have so many problems. She curled up beside me, still smelling like motel soap and another man's cologne. "Damon made a real breakthrough tonight. I think he's finally ready to surrender his struggles to God." "That's wonderful, honey." She fell asleep within minutes. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. The following Sunday, I made my first appearance at Trinity Baptist in 3 months. Chloe nearly choked on her communion wine when I slid into our usual pew. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "Felt called to worship. Is that okay?" Pastor Rivers delivered a sermon about forgiveness and redemption. His son Damon sat in the front row, nodding along like the devoted young Christian he pretended to be. When our eyes met across the sanctuary, he smiled and waved. I waved back. After service, Chloe dragged me toward the fellowship hall. I want you to meet someone special. Damon approached with that $1,000,000 smile and an extended hand. You must be Nate. Chloe talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. I shook his hand harder than necessary. She says you're an HVAC specialist. That must be rewarding work. It has its moments. You get to see inside people's homes, learn their secrets. His smile faltered slightly. Damon's been such a blessing to our youth ministry, Chloe interjected. He has a real gift for connecting with people. I bet he does. That Wednesday, Chloe announced she'd be attending a weekend youth retreat at Camp Galilee, 2 hours north. It's a chance for intensive discipleship with the young adults, she explained while packing her overnight bag. Sounds intensive. You should come. We could use help with maintenance issues. The retreat center was a collection of rustic cabins surrounding a main lodge built in the 1960s. I'd done repair work there before, knew every building, every back road, every blind spot where the security cameras couldn't reach. I arrived Friday evening in my work truck, tool belt loaded with legitimate repair equipment and some less legitimate surveillance gear. The retreat theme was purity and purpose. 43 teenagers and young adults gathered for 3 days of worship, Bible study, and what Chloe called authentic Christian fellowship. I fixed a broken water heater in cabin 7, replaced faulty wiring. In the kitchen, unclogged the shower drains in the girls' dormitory. Good old reliable Nate, keeping the plumbing running while his wife played counselor with her boy toy. Friday night, I watched them from the maintenance shed, Chloe and Damon standing apart. From the group during evening campfire worship, whispering, touching, making plans. At midnight, I followed the path to cabin 12. The window blinds were drawn, but maintenance keys opened every door. I slipped inside and planted a small recording device behind the electrical outlet, the kind private investigators used, purchased with cash from a shop in the next county. Then I went back to my cabin and waited. Saturday morning brought revelation. The recording device had captured 3 hours of audio, 3 hours of my wife moaning another man's name, 3 hours of them planning their future together, a future that involved Chloe divorcing me and taking half of everything I owned. He's too stupid to fight it. Chloe's voice crackled through my earbuds. Small-town HVAC guys don't understand prenups or property law. What about the house? Damon asked. I'll claim emotional harm, say he drank too much and threatened me. The judge will award me spousal support and half the equity, and then we can be together openly once the divorce is final and the money settled. My parents will understand eventually. I powered off the device and walked to the lodge for breakfast. Chloe sat with the female retreat leaders, discussing the morning's Bible study on marital faithfulness. Damon led a table of teenage boys through devotions about love and healthy closeness. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. Morning, folks, I said, approaching their table with a thermos of coffee. Nate! Chloe jumped up and hugged me. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Kept hearing noises from the cabins. Mice, probably, or maybe something bigger. Damon's fork paused halfway to his mouth. I should check the walls for holes today. Make sure nothing's getting in that shouldn't be there. That would be wonderful, Pastor Rivers said from the head table. We appreciate your dedication to maintaining God's property. Just doing my job, Pastor. Some things need fixing, and some need exterminating. The confrontation came Sunday afternoon. I was loading tools into my truck when Damon appeared beside the maintenance shed. His youth pastor smile had been replaced by something harder. We need to talk, he said. About what? About you sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. I set down my toolbox and turned to face him. Up close, he was smaller than he looked from a distance, gym muscles and protein powder, but no real strength. Funny thing about maintenance work, I said. You see things, hear things, learn things about people. Is that a threat? It's a fact, like the fact that you're sleeping with my wife. His jaw tightened. Chloe and I have a spiritual connection you could never understand. Spiritual, right? Is that what you call it when you're grunting on top of her in a $50 motel room? He stepped closer. You're pathetic. A washed-up, blue-collar nobody who can't satisfy his own wife. Maybe, but I'm not a predator who seduces married women by pretending to need counseling. Chloe came to me. She's unhappy, has been for years. You just never bothered to notice. The first punch came fast, caught me in the jaw, and snapped my head back. But I'd been in fights before, bar fights, job site disagreements, the kind of scraps that teach you how to take a hit and give one back. I tackled him into the shed wall, tools scattered. He threw wild punches while I worked his ribs with short, hard strikes. He was younger and prettier, but I was meaner and desperate. When it was over, he lay gasping in the dirt, and my split lip throbbed with pain. "Stay away from my wife," I said. He laughed through broken teeth. "Too late for that. She's already mine." I walked away before I did something I'd regret. Monday morning brought consequences. The retreat center security camera had captured our fight. Grainy footage of two men throwing punches behind the maintenance shed. Someone had uploaded it to the church Facebook page with the caption, "Violence at Youth Retreat." My phone rang at 6 a.m. "Chloe, what on earth did you do?" Defended myself. "Pastor Rivers wants to meet with us today." The meeting took place in Pastor Rivers' office, a wood-paneled sanctuary lined with theological books and family photos. Damon sat beside his father, sporting a black eye and a bandaged nose. Chloe took the chair furthest from me. "This is deeply troubling," Pastor Rivers began. "Violence has no place in Christian fellowship. Your son threw the first punch," I said. "Damon tells me you threatened him." "I told him to stay away from my wife." Pastor Rivers frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Nate. It's a serious situation." Chloe spoke for the first time. "Nate's been struggling with paranoid thoughts lately. I think he needs counseling." Paranoid. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the smartwatch screenshots. "Like this paranoid?" I showed them the texts, the photos, months of evidence. Pastor Rivers went pale. Damon shifted in his chair. Chloe stared at her hands. "This is deeply disappointing," Pastor Rivers said finally. "Which part? Your son corrupting a married woman, or your church harboring adulterers? I think we need some time to pray about this situation." "You do that. I'll be consulting with my lawyer." I stood to leave, but Chloe's voice stopped me. "Don't make this ugly, Nate." I turned back. "Sweetheart, it's already ugly. I'm just deciding how ugly it gets." The papers were served Thursday morning. Restraining order, petition for legal separation, motion for temporary spousal support. Chloe had moved fast, probably with help from Gerald Hoffman, Trinity Baptist lawyer and deacon board member. The restraining order prohibited me from contacting Chloe directly or coming within 500 feet of our house, the house that I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years. I moved into a furnished apartment above Luis's bar, a cramped 2-room space that smelled like cigarettes and cleaning fluid. Everything I owned fit in the back of my pickup truck. "This is temporary," Luis said, helping me carry boxes upstairs. "You'll fight this." "With what money?" "Hoffman's charging her nothing. I can't afford decent representation, so what's the plan?" I opened a beer and sat on the second-hand couch. "The plan is to let them think they've won." Luis raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like you." "That's the point." Over the next 2 weeks, I played the broken husband perfectly, showed up to work disheveled and distracted, drank alone at Luis's bar. Every night loud enough for everyone to hear about my marriage troubles, let word spread that poor Nate Collins was falling apart. Meanwhile, I was learning things, like how Gerald Hoffman had been skimming from the church, building fund for 3 years, like how Pastor Rivers had been inflating attendance, numbers to qualify for denominational bonuses, like how Damon had a sealed juvenile record. In California, that would be very interesting to Trinity Baptist Deacon Board. Information was power, and I was collecting all I could get. The church gala was scheduled for the first Saturday in November, an annual fundraiser for overseas missions featuring dinner, dancing, and a silent auction. Chloe had volunteered to organize the youth ministry table. I bought a ticket. "You can't be serious," Luis said when I told him. "Perfectly serious. The restraining order applies to private contact. This is a public event. It's self-destruction, hermano. It's strategy." I spent the afternoon at Men's Warehouse buying the first suit I'd owned in 10 years, navy blue, properly fitted, with a white shirt and conservative tie. I had my hair cut and my beard trimmed. By evening, I looked like a different man. The gala was held at the Riverside Country Club, the same building where Chloe and I had celebrated our wedding. Reception. 8 years earlier, I arrived alone, bought a drink at the bar, and found a table in the back. Chloe appeared 20 minutes later on Damon's arm, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. They worked the room like a political couple, shaking hands and accepting congratulations on their ministry partnership. Pastor Rivers delivered the keynote address about supporting Christian youth in their spiritual journeys. "When we invest in our young people," he said, "we invest in the future of faith itself." The crowd applauded. I smiled and clapped along. The silent auction began at 8. I bid on several items. A weekend at a lake house, dinner for two at the fancy Italian place, assigned. Football from the local high school team. Nothing I actually wanted, just making my presence known. At 9:30, I approached Damon at the youth ministry table. "Quite a turnout," I said. He looked up from counting donation envelopes. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting missions, same as everyone else." Chloe appeared beside him. "You need to leave. Why?" "I bought a ticket. Haven't violated the restraining order. Just a concerned church member contributing to overseas evangelism." "You're making people uncomfortable." "I'm making you uncomfortable. There's a difference." Pastor Rivers materialized at my elbow. "Nate, perhaps it would be best." "Pastor, I respect your concern, but I've got every right to be here." I turned to Damon. "How's the youth ministry fundraising going? Lot of generous contributors tonight." "Fine," Damon said through gritted teeth. "That's wonderful. Christian generosity is a beautiful thing." I picked up one of the donation envelopes. "Take Gerald Hoffman, for instance, always giving back to the church. Of course, it's easier to be generous when you're using other people's money." Pastor Rivers frowned. "What do you mean?" "Oh, probably nothing. Just accountant talk. I'm sure Gerald can explain the building fund discrepancies if anyone ever asks." The color drained from Hoffman's face. He'd been standing close enough to hear every word. "Are you making accusations?" Pastor Rivers asked. "Just observations, like how attendance numbers can be creative when there's bonus money involved, or how sealed juvenile records sometimes unseal themselves when people get curious." Damon stepped forward. "You're out of line. Am I? Or am I just asking the questions nobody else wants to ask?" The conversation had drawn a crowd. Other gala attendees were edging closer, sensing drama. "Questions like what?" Chloe demanded. "Like whether the congregation knows their youth pastor has a criminal history in California, or whether the deacon board approved your trips to Riverside Motel for counseling sessions." Gasps from the crowd. Someone's cell phone camera flashed. "You're lying," Damon said. "Am I? Should we ask Veronica Henderson? She's got interesting photos from her evening jog. Seems the motel parking lot is visible from the river trail." I'd spent 2 weeks cultivating Veronica's gossip network, feeding her carefully selected information about Chloe and Damon's meetings. Church ladies loved scandal almost as much as they loved Jesus. "That's enough," Pastor Rivers said. "I think you should leave." Already heading out, I straightened my tie and smiled at the crowd. "Enjoyed the evening, folks. Very enlightening." I walked toward the exit, but Damon's voice stopped me. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" I turned back. "Compared to what?" "You're nothing, Nate. A loser who couldn't keep his own wife happy. Maybe, but at least I'm not a predator who hides behind Daddy's pulpit." That's when he snapped. Damon launched himself across the youth ministry table, scattering donation envelopes and promotional materials. He caught me in the chest with his shoulder, driving us both into the silent auction display. We went down hard, taking out a table full of gift certificates and handicrafts. The crowd screamed and scattered as we rolled across the floor, throwing punches and grabbing for leverage. This time, I was ready for him. I caught his wrist as he swung for my face, twisted his arm behind his back, and drove my knee into his ribs. He gasped and tried to break free, but desperation made me stronger. "Get off him!" Chloe screamed. I hauled Damon to his feet and marched him toward the French doors leading to the country club's patio. He struggled and cursed, but I had 50 pounds and 8 years of hard work on him. "Where are we going?" he panted. "Sunday school." The country club's pool area was decorated for fall, pumpkins and cornstalks. Around the deck chairs, colored lights strung between the umbrellas. The swimming pool itself was empty except for a few inches of rainwater and fallen leaves. Perfect. I shoved Damon toward the pool edge. "You want to play preacher? Let's have a baptism. You're insane." "Probably, but I'm also done being the joke." He tried to run, but I caught his collar and yanked him back. We struggled on the pool deck, while gala guests pressed against the windows, watching the show. "This won't solve anything," he yelled. "Maybe not, but it'll make me feel better." I grabbed his belt and shirt collar, lifted him off his feet and threw him into the shallow end of the pool. The splash echoed across the country club grounds. Damon surfaced, sputtering, his formal wear soaked and clinging to his gym-sculpted frame. Leaves stuck to his hair like a crown of thorns. "How's that for spiritual cleansing?" I called down to him. He tried to climb out, but I pushed him back in with my foot. "Stay down there until you figure out the difference between ministry and adultery." The crowd behind the windows had grown larger. Cell phones captured everything from multiple angles. By morning, the video would be all over social media. Damon Rivers, youth, pastor and golden boy, getting dunked like a bratty kid at summer camp. "You'll pay for this," he gasped. "Already have. Wife, house, reputation. You took it all. But you know what? What? My self-respect. You can't take that. I just got that back." I walked away from the pool, past the staring crowd at the French doors, and out to the parking lot. Behind me, Damon finally climbed out of the water, dripping and humiliated. Chloe ran to him with a towel. They looked perfect together, the fallen preacher and the cheating wife, helping each other salvage what was left of their dignity. The fallout was swift and decisive. By Sunday morning, the pool video had been shared 847 times on Facebook. By Monday, local news stations were running the story. By Tuesday, the denominational headquarters was demanding explanations from Trinity Baptist leadership. Gerald Hoffman resigned from the deacon board after a hastily called financial audit. Pastor Rivers took a leave of absence to seek God's guidance about his son's future in ministry. Damon was formally removed from all youth leadership positions pending investigation of moral and ethical concerns. Chloe filed additional charges against me: assault, maltreatment, disturbing the peace. But the video evidence showed Damon throwing the first punch, and witness statements supported my claim of self-defense. More importantly, Veronica Henderson's gossip network had finally produced results. 3 different church ladies came forward with stories about Chloe and Damon's suspicious behavior: late-night meetings, inappropriate touching during prayer sessions, weekend trips that weren't officially sanctioned youth activities. The restraining order was modified to allow me access to my own house. The divorce proceedings stalled as Chloe's legal team tried to manage the public relations disaster. I moved back home on a Wednesday afternoon. The house felt different, smaller somehow, like it had shrunk during my month away. Chloe's belongings were gone, leaving empty spaces on shelves and bare walls where her paintings had hung. In the bedroom closet, I found a cardboard box labeled "Donations." Inside were old electronics, my first smartphone, a broken tablet, and the smartwatch that had started everything. At the bottom of the box was a newer phone I'd never seen before, Chloe's burner. I powered it up. 17 voicemails from Damon, recorded over the past month. I listened to all of them. "Baby, we can't let him destroy us. Once the divorce is final, we'll move to Florida. Dad knows people there. I talked to the lawyer again. If you claim abuse, the judge will give you everything: the house, his retirement account, spousal support for 5 years. We just have to be patient. Let him think he's winning, then crush him in court." The final message was dated 3 days ago. "I know you're scared, but this will work. He's just a stupid HVAC guy. We're smarter than him. We're better than him, and we're going to take everything he has." I saved the recordings to a flash drive and called my lawyer. The meeting with Chloe's legal team took place the following Monday in Gerald Hoffman's old office. Her new attorney was a sharp-dressed woman from the county seat who specialized in what she called high-conflict divorce proceedings. "My client is prepared to be reasonable," the lawyer began. "She's willing to accept 60% of marital assets and 3 years of spousal support." "How generous," my attorney replied. "What does she offer in return?" "Discretion. No further public embarrassment. No additional charges filed against your client." I leaned forward. "What about her phone?" The lawyer frowned. "What phone?" "The burner phone she used to coordinate adultery and plan fraud against me." Chloe went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." I placed the flash drive on the conference table. 17 voicemails from her boyfriend discussing strategies to falsely claim mistreatment and steal my assets. "Should I play them now, or would you prefer to hear them privately first?" The lawyer picked up the drive. "This is allegedly from an unauthorized search." "Wrong. I found it in a donation box in my own house, which I'm legally entitled to access." 20 minutes later, we had a new deal. Chloe would receive 20% of marital assets, enough to relocate and start over, but not enough to live comfortably without working. No spousal support, no claims of mistreatment, no further maltreatment charges. In return, I wouldn't press charges for fraud, wouldn't release the voicemail recordings, and wouldn't pursue civil damages for adultery. "She also needs to make a public statement," I added. "Regarding what?" the lawyer asked. "Withdrawing her mistreatment allegations, admitting she filed false charges out of anger and embarrassment." Chloe finally spoke. "I won't do that." "Then we'll see you in court. I'm sure the judge will enjoy hearing those voicemails." She signed the agreement that afternoon. The public statement ran in the local newspaper's Sunday edition. I, Chloe Collins, wish to publicly withdraw allegations of domestic mistreatment against my estranged husband, Nate Collins. These allegations were made in anger and do not reflect the truth of our marriage. Nate never physically harmed or threatened me. I apologize for any damage my false accusations may have caused to his reputation. It was buried on page 6, but everyone who mattered would see it. Small towns didn't miss gossip, especially when it involved love, lies, and church politics. I was changing the oil in my truck when Luis appeared in my driveway. "So it's over?" he asked. "The legal part. Divorce will be final in 60 days. And Damon moved to Atlanta last week. His daddy found him a position at a megachurch where nobody knows about his swimming pool baptism." Luis laughed. "What about Chloe?" "Gone. Took her 20% and disappeared. Heard she's living with her sister in Phoenix. You going to be okay?" I wiped my hands on a shop rag and looked around the neighborhood. Same houses, same streets, same life I'd been building for 8 years, but different now. Mine again. "Yeah, I think I will be." That evening, I drove to Trinity Baptist for the first time since the gala. The parking lot was nearly empty. Wednesday night prayer service drew maybe 20 people these days. I sat in my truck and watched through the windows as the remnant faithful went through their rituals. Pastor Rivers was back, looking older and more fragile than before. A handful of deacons, some elderly ladies, a few families with young children. The church would survive. It always did. But it would be smaller now, more careful about who it trusted with authority. The scandal had taught them that even pastors' sons could fall, that even devoted wives could betray their vows. Maybe that was a lesson worth learning. I started the truck and drove home. In the morning, I had 3 HVC installations scheduled. Frank was happy to have me back full-time, and the work felt good, honest labor that fixed things instead of breaking them. At home, I heated up leftover pizza and sat on the couch where Chloe used to fold laundry while watching cooking shows. The house was quiet except for the furnace cycling on and off. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy. You destroyed everything." I deleted it without responding. 10 minutes later, another message. "We could have worked this out. All you had to do was let go." Delete. A third message arrived as I was brushing my teeth. "This isn't over." I saved that one and forwarded it to my lawyer just in case. But I wasn't worried. Chloe and Damon had taken their best chance and missed. They'd played their hand and lost everything that mattered: reputation, community, the support system that had enabled their affair. I'd won by refusing to be the victim they expected me to be. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and looked at the empty spaces where her clothes used to hang. Tomorrow, I'd buy new things to fill those spaces, or maybe I'd leave them empty. Either way, they were mine to decide. I turned off the lights and went to sleep in my own bed, in my own house, on my own terms. For the first time in months, I slept through the night.